Ooh, we started talking and all of a sudden.
Yeah, have to.
Hey. I almost totally lost track of
Might be
time.
why, Christy, you're not on here.
Over Gavin.
That makes me feel a lot better, actually.
We're actually gonna move the meeting to the meal room.
Subway Castle. It's perfect timing.
Make sure you're on the other one.
Okay, I have 6 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get started. And first up, we have an update from the JV Housing Authority. Thanks, Ashley.
Thanks, Dan. Hello, everyone. I just got to speak to many of you the other night at the intergovernmental dinner. So some of this is a little redundant, but I want to, I wasn't thinking about that when I put this together. So and I had to get it a little bit early. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
I need to hear something at least twice, so you're
Okay,
good.
well, it'll be good, right? Thanks so much for the opportunity to speak this evening. And I'm going to do a look back at 2023 and kind of look forward to 2024. So the word that comes to mind is partnerships. The partnerships that we've developed in 2023 they're going to set us up for success in 2024. Next slide, please. The CHA 2023-24 strategic initiatives are really focused on partner-driven development, putting units into the ground, education and advocacy, impactful programming, and sustainable funding. In 2023, we made significant strides in achieving our partner-driven housing development goals. We've gone from, hopefully, very soon, 0 units in the ground to 77 through the, if you could actually fast forward to the next slide, through Jane's Place and Carbonate Street. I know everybody's still itching to find out when Jane's Place will start. It will start just as soon as we get the financing in order with hopefully High Country Bank, and Dieseland's ready to go. So we're just trying to close that financing, and the Division of Housing is their grant contracting has to be finished up too. So we're inching along. There's been a little bit of a hiccup, but we're still plowing forward with that. We've raised a lot of money in 2023, including $1.3 million from the OEDIT, Office of Economic Development and International Trade, and $50,000 from Betcher, which are $40,000 from Betcher, and $50,000 from the Gates Family Foundation. And we're continuing to apply for a couple more grants and funding that will close the funding gap. And we are grateful for your letter of intent. Hopefully, we will not have to use it. We're also focusing on operations at Jane's Place to make sure that it's safe. Really need to think through how are all these different populations going to work together and live together. And so that's something that we're really focused on right now at the CHA. The next project is Carbonate Street. The groundbreaking is scheduled for, I think, March 13th. So that's exciting. They've already built a lot of the units in there, and Fading West has already built a lot of the units. There's 60 deed restricted units in BV, serving workforce renters earning between 80% and 120% AMI. So the special limited partnership that we entered into allows for that elimination of the property and sales tax for Fading West, which is exciting. And we've got other developments that are coming online. Next slide, please. So other potential partnerships we're talking with, We did get a $1.2 million grant from land banking grant from Proposition 123 that will help us acquire 2 acres in the Alpine West development, which is in the county near BV. The entitlements is not quite finished up there at the county, but ultimately the goal is to have 75 units of apartments and 6 ownership units for the Chafee Housing Trust. We're also working on a partnership with the Crossing and Buena Vista. That's a 3-phased mixed income, mixed use infill development project. And hopefully, we're anticipating that that the developer, Paul Andrews, is going to build 30 apartment units, deed restricted at 80 to 100% AMI there. And he's trying to do it turnkey so that CHA doesn't do the work. We've been supportive in helping him get some grant funding for the infrastructure. So that's exciting. And then we're also in preliminary talks with Rob Gartzman for a special limited partnership for the flour mill development that would bring, as you all know very well, 69 units, specifically 20 units of deed restricted apartment units. So that is about development. Does anybody have any questions on that?
So I just have a question on the flour mill. I mean, I know he was talking about at least 50% of the units, so that's 69, so 34, 35.
Yeah.
Are these above and beyond that, or is that part of that?
No, so the special limited partnership would be with the apartment units and the 15 deed restricted condos.
That would be to get them the tax breaks.
Yes.
Okay, I got you.
So, I mean, we just barely started this conversation, but, it's something that he wants to do and that we want to do if the board is so willing, but yeah.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Any other questions on development? Okay. So education and advocacy, you all are very familiar with the Housing Solutions Coalition. It's something that I really enjoy working with all these organizations, the Community Foundation, the Chafee Housing Trust, and the EDC, and we've come before you several times, specifically to advocate for some of these different things that at the South Arc and for the Flour Mill Project, and we meet every other week and really talk a lot about how we can partner and how we can support things that we're all aligned on. So that's something that's a highlight that I think, is one of the things I'm most proud of in the last few months that we've been working together on. Next slide on impactful programming. Our continuum of care has continued to be really successful. It's a partnership between all of the different organizations that serve homeless and housing insecure individuals. There's some data here on the slide for you. I think we're looking at actually trying to have some office hours in BV because we've had a lot of strong presence here in Salida, and we'd like to be able to serve the north end of the county. Not so relevant to you all, but we just want to be, making sure that we're serving all of the county. And a success story here, Amy Brigham is a local resident of Chafee County, and she was recently housed in a permanent housing solution for her. And it takes a lot to put together, help everybody fill out the vouchers, and we're partnered with DHS and partnered with the Chafee County Public Health. Really, this is the kind of thing that we're trying to do, is find housing for folks that don't have it. And so, it's to get a voucher, there's not that many of them, and to get this accomplished is a big win. I mean, it seems like, okay, we're housing one person, but, there's a lot of competitive process with these tax credit projects. And so I just wanted to share that highlight. Any questions on those two before I move on to funding? Okay, So we're looking for a sustainable funding source for the Housing Authority so that we can continue to do continue to partner and do good work with building up to 250 units in the next 10 years. I'm really excited about the work I've done with Judd Selby and Rob Guardsman and PV trustee Peter Hilton Hinga, Amy Eckstein, Jake Rashavi, Salty Riggs, to name a few. Those folks are part of the business community here and in BV, and would be able to, well, not Salty because she's on our board now, but they would be able to carry a campaign forward if this is, something that the board decides to do. Worked really hard on a survey. I hope you all have seen it and taken it. Put together a 10-year plan for how we would spend that money, including land banking, adaptive reuse, ADU incentives, public-private partnerships, subsidies. So we're not just the SLPs, but also to really offer subsidies to developers who want to build affordable housing, in a substantial way. Something like up to 20% of their dollars could be coming from the Housing Authority. So we're not building all the units, they are. And preservation of existing units is another option. I've heard a lot about rental subsidies and a down payment assistance program and how important those could be to the community as well. So that's part of the plan also. But we can't do this alone. Please take the survey, spread the word. Really want your feedback and input to see if this is the right time to do this. I don't know when another time would be, but we're pretty excited and really need your support. So if you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Ashley, how long is the survey open, or when does it close?
Yeah, so it started last week it was open on Tuesday. I think that was the 30th. And then on the 1st, we started having the texts go out to your phones if you're a registered voter. And that will go through the 19th. So actually a positive update is that we've already had 650 people take the survey as of this morning. The goal was 600, so we're plowing through. We just need to get some more folks to get as many people to take it as we possibly can so we can get that feedback.
Did it go out to all of Chaffey County? Sorry.
Yeah, it did. I mean, it's on our website, www.chaffeyhousingauthority.org, so you can take it that way. The QR code on the screen has been in the Arc Valley Voice, and we sent it out to other press, and then the text messages is another way that you can also take it that way.
Councilmember Davenport?
So Ashley, the target audience, of course I work with people who do not live here.
I know.
And so are you looking really for Chaffey County residents' response?
Yeah, I mean, the only Chaffey County can vote, and this is a tax measure, so we want to make sure we're getting the input of Chaffey County residents, because they're the voter base that would decide if we were successful or not, if we're going to be successful or not in November.
Now, I haven't taken the survey yet, but I assume that's one of the questions. Where do you live?
It's the first question.
Perfect.
Yes, we did hire Magellan Strategies, and they're an excellent political consulting firm to help us with this. They do this all day long with all kinds of ballot measures. So they've been instrumental in helping the ballot committee figure this all out and know what questions to ask and what order and which ones to focus on. So yeah.
And then I would remind the public that we're the ones who really shot down the sales tax idea. People have the idea that sales tax is magic. Not when you're poor. It's a very regressive tax, and council was 100% dead set against it. Whenever you go after property tax, of course, people are terrified about the value of their homes increasing and their ability to pay those tax. So I would suggest a modest ask in that regard and try to get your foot in the door.
Sure. We definitely have 4 options on the survey. 2 different levels of sales and property tax, and 2 different, and a 10-year sunset provision that would give the housing authority the opportunity to show accountability before it becomes a permanent thing, or we go back to the voter base and ask again. Because we recognize that there's a need to say, hey, give us a shot. Let us prove this, that we can do this, and let us prove that this plan will work. So I hear you that a sales tax is regressive. I also know that a property tax can be passed along. You know, if you're a tenant and you're living in a rental and there's a landlord, they may just pass that along to you. So there's a lot of pros and cons to both kinds of taxes. I mean, I think the pro of the sales tax is that everybody's pitching in. I hear you, but you know, there's a lot of different arguments on both sides for sure.
I would reiterate that the thing with the property tax is the only way
Right.
to get into the pocket of the second homeowners who own most of the community. I'm
Yeah.
strongly in favor of a property tax.
Right.
But it has to be modest if you're going to have any chance.
No,
And
I
it'll be
hear you.
interesting to see what kind of feedback we get from the survey.
Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I will say I really appreciate like a success story posting that. I mean, it really turns the data into a person. It also just really helps really identify when somebody's dream house is about the tiniest thing you can imagine. It kind of, how we started this conversation was, you know, people just need a roof. When the roof becomes like a dream, that's where we're at. So it is really important. And I am looking forward to, you know, future in you know, strategic endeavor. Especially, I see a lot of potential with ADU incentives. I always have. I mean, talk about just for our particular situation in Salida, when it comes to infill, the potential. There's so much potential there. But yeah, I really appreciate a success story. Thank you for putting that in there.
Sure
Anything
thing.
else?
Good luck. There's just so many things that only the housing authority can do.
I know.
We're glad you're here.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Good evening.
Okay, and now next up, it's the use of the affordable housing funds.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. You do not have any documents associated with this work session topic. We wanted to open it up. Councilmember Critelli had brought up some questions, so we wanted just to have a conversation about how we're using the Affordable Housing Fund dollars and where they could go legally, you know, what different programs could look like. So kind of just wanted to open it up right now. Councilmember Critelli, if you wanted to.
Definitely.
Okay.
Well, just as far as when you kind of, you know, have a situation where there are units being presented and we need them now, and then we're kind of like, well, we do have when you have, you know, when you feel like a fund is tied up in earmarks for an uncertain future, when you're being presented with a certain present, I do feel the frustration there, especially when there is this huge push to say, how's this money being spent? Is it a slush fund? Considering the ugliness of this last election on the subject, it definitely just felt like, yeah, the sooner the better of saying, hey, this is that money actually turning into units
Gotcha.
now. And especially because projects in the future, there's no certainty that it'll work out or that the bottom doesn't drop out of negotiations. It happens a lot. The first biggest housing project I worked on doesn't exist. So I just feel like I was basically feeling the frustration in that moment, even though you guys are the professionals. It's not just like, oh yeah, please take this money. You know, like,
Well, we're happy to share information with you and answer
love that.
all of the questions that you have, obviously.
I love information.
So, so I checked in with our finance director today. The Affordable Housing Fund has $957,000 in it, is what's been accumulated to date. And it comes from a couple of different sources, right? Our inclusionary housing fund and the some of the taxes that have been voted on recently. We've mentioned before a few of the projects that we've been kind of keeping an eye on as potential uses for those funds. So just a little bit of an update so you know where they are in the process. First and D project, which is the art space project. We have been moving forward with design on that. We're hoping to have a community presentation next month that will help us really start narrowing down the costs associated with that project. The city of Salida was awarded $750,000 in a land banking grant through Proposition 123. If we utilize those funds for what we would like to, we'll need approximately $250,000 to $300,000 match to move that land purchase forward. The South Arc Neighborhood Infrastructure Project, we have been, when I say we, Bill Elmquist has been the primary source. We've been successful getting some matching fund commitments from both CMC and the county to move forward with that infrastructure out at South Arc. It will require the city to come up with about $1.25 million in match based on what the Department of Local Affairs has said we could apply for through the More Housing Now and Stronger Communities grant programs. We do have a presentation at the end of this month in front of DOLA for the More Housing Now program. So we're really hopeful that we'll be successful to move those forward. I did give a call to Andrew Atchley, our Division of Housing Regional Manager, just to kind of get a feel for what other infrastructure funding there might be available that we could utilize city funds for other projects like the flour mill. So the Community Development Block Grant funding is a source of federal funding that can be used for infrastructure for housing projects. The City of Salida doesn't participate in the CDBG project very often because of the income requirements for use of those funds. So if the city were to apply for CDBG funds for this, use covenant would be associated with the project on the property, which would require 51% of the individuals living on that property to be 80% or below the AMI. And that is one that would stick with the land regardless of the phasing of that project. There's also a transformational affordable housing loan fund that could be applied for by developers. It is a loan fund, so it does require a repayment plan. It's less likely for local governments to actually apply for those funds because we would need to have a taper vote to go through that process. Ashley with the Housing Authority talked about one other partnership. We talked a lot about public-private partnerships and what that looks like really for particularly a statutory city. The special limited partnerships is one that a lot of development could partner with the government on to get that tax-free material. In general, I don't think the city has ever seen that, but definitely something that they could partner with the Housing Authority on. And then we did talk a little bit about how it looks to waive fees if we're, particularly for the Affordable Housing Fund, if we were to perhaps pay for building permit fees out of that fund. That's a possibility. We generally don't waive fees because they're associated with a service that the city is providing. So water or wastewater fees, those dollars go into an enterprise fund that then are used for asset maintenance or replacement costs. So we looked at those as well. Just kind of wanted to give you a little bit of an idea of what the staff had been thinking about.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's one of those things where I certainly, before the flour mill, I wouldn't have been like, but what if somebody wants to make their whole project 100% affordable, then what? And I'm not even really expecting that to happen again. But it happened, and then it just, yeah, I guess the optics were the fund at work again. And then I'm like, yeah, that's why I drive a convertible, like, even though I don't. So I think that was that. I think it was more or less, how freed up are the funds, or are they all always going to be earmarked for, is it always going to go towards, matching for grants? Is that would it even make sense for, like, would it make sense for us as a city to, if there was a developer who wanted to make their project 100% affordable, like, how would we even do that, and
Yep.
would we?
Yeah.
I mean, if that's even possible,
I think it would be best to have those policies in advance of someone coming in front of us. I think there's probably, legal and ethical concerns with just giving money to one private development. But that being said, Christy just listed a few different options that go towards private development that help for infrastructure. One idea that Bill and Christy have been talking about is programs to use the affordable housing for a buy down of for deed restrictions. I don't know if Bill wants to talk further about that, but that could be used for that particular project. And what you're saying is helping individual homeowners and residents rather than just cutting a check to a developer with, no strings attached. So it's either like going the infrastructure route or other types of things that Christy's saying, or this buy down program, which could help with a specific development. It's not, I think that's a better way to go about it.
Yeah, and of course it would look, I don't want to run the whole conversation, but it would look really good to just be able to tie that money spent to the deed restriction, so it's not as super convoluted, that it just there is that you can make sense of it. You can say this is how much this fund has resulted in deed restriction, or that in that way, or helped or assisted.
If the council wants to tie it to deed restriction, we can look at that. The municipal code doesn't specify it for deed restriction projects or deed restricted projects.
Okay.
One thing I think a lot about with this conversation, I think these are really good questions to ask and conversations to have. But coming from a about diversification, I feel it makes a lot of sense to diversify those affordable housing dollars amongst different projects, because we have had projects that have come before us in the past with the best of intentions that for whatever reason didn't come to fruition. And when you're dealing with phased projects, what happened? So you look at Flour Mill, and I'm really happy about what they're bringing to the table, but it's 3 phases as I understand it. And it's in the last phase that we get, I believe, a lot of the rentals, correct? And so what happens if something happens before we get to that phase and they're not able to do that phase? So I just think spreading it out, and it's great to have these conversations, but I worry a little bit if we were to say hypothetically give money, and then what happens if it doesn't come to fruition?
To continue that conversation, I hear our city attorney the concerns of just going from one project to the other. So maybe we can prepare the buy-in of the city to make a unit that otherwise would not be deed restricted to a certain AMI, and then we have kind of a blueprint that any developer could look at, or any homeowner could look at and say, yes, I want to apply for that and see whether the funds are there.
Right.
I like the idea of having a menu of things that we could use it for. We don't want to pin ourselves into a corner that we can only do X, because we can't see what's coming, what opportunities are coming, what changes in law might affect that. You know, so we want to be fluid, but we want the connection to housing to be clear. So there's an assurance to the public that we're doing with the money what we said we're doing.
And I do like all those different approaches, and it is nice to just know, yeah, what maybe the priorities are, or if it's kind of just equal across the board, or, you know, diversifying that and actually pursuing all those different ways and then seeing how they work, you know.
I had that same knee-jerk reaction when the flour mill was proposed. Oh, if we help a little bit, it could be 100% affordable. That does sound good, and but of course we need like a blueprint.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And I'll just add, without oversimplifying, that the using the funds as a match for grants is how we make the dollars grow significantly. So I understand your frustration with that. When we could just spend the money now and get more units.
Yeah.
I mean, theoretically, but the grants is how we leverage the funds.
I think it was also that's just the timing. It was like the beginning of the year, and that quota we have to hit just went up that much more. That number keeps rising, and we haven't really got it to drop very much. So, hence the the eagerness. But yeah,
Totally understandable.
But thank you.
We will continue to work.
Okay.
Good.
Does that feel like, did I get you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay, great. Everyone else feel pretty good with that?
Okay.
Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the time you put into that. Next up, we have the interstate parking program.
All right, Mayor and
Welcome.
Council. So we wanted to bring this forward to you. Tomorrow is on the council agenda. You have the second reading of the ordinance regarding the interstate parking contract. And we wanted to have an opportunity for y'all to talk about this, ask questions. The folks from Interstate Parking are here. So just a bit more informal so that if you have questions that we can just have a more open conversation. So you have a memo in your packet. The bulk of the memo is information that you have already received at a previous work session, I believe in December. I did want to point out a couple things for you all. We have, as you all are aware, the city does not own any property downtown for parking. We have 3 leases currently for parking. These leases total almost $135,000 annually that the city pays to private property owners. We know that it's a value for our community to have places to park downtown for tourists and for residents as well. These leases continue to get more and more expensive, and it's just a fact of doing business here in the city. I also included with your packet a draft map. This is a concept, right? This is your city staff looking at the various areas downtown, walking the streets, looking at what could potentially be various zones that interstate parking could be enforcing. So we have Zone A, which is in the middle there. It's a kind of orangish color. This is where we envisioned paid parking, whatever that looks like. We don't have the fee schedule set up yet, but this is where the most intense part of traffic is. This is where most of our tourists are coming and parking, and this we see as the ideal space if we are going to be charging for parking. Zone B is the blue parking. This includes parking over by Safeway, the public parking by Safeway. It includes the newest lot along the Monarch Spur Trail. Again, could be paid parking, it could be longer term paid. We envisioned this where we direct employees for downtown, free parking for them. Parking to go to work, so just kind of advertising that as a place for them. Zone C are the two parking, potentially longer term parking, one across the river that's owned by UP, one owned by the Salida Bottling Company on First Street. Again, paid parking, but perhaps the structure looks a little bit different because we do know that more people are accessing our recreation at the UP parking, so maybe it's something that's longer term, giving people a chance to go on their mountain bike ride or whatever it looks like. Zone D parking, this is we envisioned as not paid but time limited. So if we are charging for parking downtown and people want to move out into residential areas, we want to make sure that people aren't parking in front of somebody's house all day. So thinking about what that looks like, having that turnover there as well. Zone E is the Tower building. This building here, the number of services provided out of this building has increased substantially. There are a lot of organizations here that see clients coming in. This parking lot is also advertised by some of our local STR owners as a place to park. So we want to make sure that we have availability for our clients and employees here at the Tower building. So that could look different. Throughout this entire process, we are envisioning time limits for free parking for people who visit, permits for people who live downtown, so they're not being charged for parking. They'd be registered. So making sure that our community members are able to access the places that they want to go and being really, really flexible. And Gareth and Jessica can talk about that flexibility within their program. But these are all things that we've been considering and happy to take your input, obviously, as well. So I did include in here potential for the city share. So you all looked at the contract. There was some conversation about the gratis parking, the 50% share back. So just a little return on investment here. Christy's math is not it's in pencil. So just thinking about the number of parking spots, how we might be charging for that parking and what it looks like. Some things just for the council to consider as we have this conversation. We know that this isn't perfect, right? There's an opportunity for us to learn and for us to change what this program looks like as we move forward. If you all decide to move forward with this contract, we can modify the program as needed. Interstate parking is extremely flexible. Everything that we've thrown at them, they're like, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can do that. Which has been really awesome. So one of the goals of the program is really to have more frequent turnover to ensure that visitors and our residents have access to parking in front of the businesses that they want to visit. So having that turnover is part of what we're looking for here. Number of studies, and Gareth can talk about this, that most money is spent in the first 1 to 2 hours of parking downtown. So if we think about how consumers are spending money and utilizing downtown, it's usually in that first couple of hours that they're parked. A secondary goal of the program is to help generate funding for more permanent parking solutions. Eventually, these lots may sell for housing on First Street or for something else across the river. So how will the city then replace that parking? Where will we get the money to do that? Let's see. Again, downtown residents, employees would be eligible for parking permits. We did talk to so there are some communities that have just enforcement of parking, and that was one of the items that was brought up at the last council meeting. And Gareth can talk more to this, but I put $75,000 in here, and then he and I spoke, and it could be upwards of $200,000 to just enforce the space that we've outlined here. So just something to think about as we move forward.
Sorry, do you mean the cost?
The cost, yes. I'm sorry.
Standalone, yeah.
Yeah, if it was just standalone, if we were to have a contract with them to do that.
Yeah.
So I did print out the presentation for you all. Gareth, if you want to come up, we can just run through this. I just want to have an opportunity for you all to be able to ask questions and so we can get the information to you.
Yeah, so it's probably best to have questions as you go through the presentation, and Jess and I will answer them, but we've got a lot of experience in Colorado, and like we said last time, we'd love to work with you guys. So if you want to go through the presentation and ask questions as you go through, we're ready to roll.
That'd be great if you want to start.
Sure.
Yep.
Are you guys able to flip?
Yep.
So we're locally owned. I'm in Evergreen. Jess is in Denver. The idea is we take care of all the costs, all the overhead, and then we provide the service. You make the decisions on rates, hours of operation, who parks where, all those things. And we've had a lot of success in Colorado with that.
Yeah, so we actually are a Colorado-based company, so we oversee Morrison, Idaho Springs, Cresta Butte, just trying to think, and also Dillon. So we do different solutions for each community. Cresta Butte's all enforcement only, and they pay that cost out of pocket. The other municipalities run on a revenue share, therefore we provide all of the services and solutions for them, and we split the profit. There's no cost to the actual city. They can just generate that revenue and reinvest into different things within the community that they so choose. We are all based here in Colorado. Our customer care team is based out of Breckenridge, and they handle all 24/7 inquiries that come through, any customer emails, feedback, and so forth. Same thing. Yeah, so again, this is places that we operate here in Colorado, as we're all present here in Colorado. We kind of understand mountain communities because that's the communities that we've all been working in. We do have some operations in Denver, but we really heavily focused in mountain communities and making that experience good for residents, visitors, and employees. Making sure employees and residents come first, therefore they have free parking within the community, and then everything else falls within the visitors that are visiting the community, and making sure they stay for a great amount of time, but also turning that space. Therefore, they're just not sitting there all day, park their cars, go to Cresta Butte and ski, and then come back. Those cars are turning. So we've seen that in a lot of communities we work with, that a lot of people just use cars to eat here, park and ride, come back, and then get their car, and those spaces never turn for the actual visitors visiting the community. Sorry, kind of all the little bit of repetition. So yes, again, we provide all the software. So any payment stations, which you can see here, kiosk, technology, the customer care team, our enforcement platform, our website that people can go there, appeal violations, find out anything that they want to know about parking within Salida. They'll have a big FAQ, lots of questions and answers, the designated parking maps that you choose that you want to designate the parking to, and so forth. Like you can visit Park Idaho Springs or parkmorrison.com, kind of give you a guideline of what that would look like for Park Salida. Again, we also create map and park, so therefore we create a custom solution. So when someone's in town, they can just go to parksalida.com, pull up, available places to park in town as we speak. Like, so they'll just be like, oh, there's a place to park here. It'll guide them there, GPS located. And then also we've been adding in like water stations, public restrooms, and so forth. So everybody can find anything within the community. It's kind of like a one-stop shop for parksalida.com.
We also provide you a lot of data analytics. Therefore, you'll see where your visitors are coming from, where they're looking at from parking. So for instance, like in Breckenridge, we see a lot of people that are coming from Denver, Utah, and so forth. So we can give you all these analytics to see where people are actually clicking from to get information about parking here in Salida. We do a lot of parking compliance. Therefore, when someone overstays or doesn't pay or doesn't have a registered permit with us, they would receive a warning at first if you so choose, or we could give them a straight violation. Again, those are things we're very flexible on. So you could decide whether if you wanted to start the program and roll out warnings just for education. We could put in there some things to just say, hey, parking is enforced now. Here's a coupon for the next time you come to town. Some things like that we did with other communities. Then we could also have it go to straight paid violations where they can take care of that all one stop at parksalida.com. Again, we'll provide all the signage, the wayfinding, the payment stations, the kiosk, all at no cost to the town or the city of Salida. And therefore, there's no money out of your pockets, and we take care of everything in return for a rev share. Again, we'll provide all the data analytics. We'll show you how many times your community is turning. So for instance, in some communities, stalls are turning up to 7 times a day based on rate structure. So there's people coming in an hour and a half, 2 hours, and moving along. Therefore, we can provide you all those data analytics on a weekly cadence, so you can kind of see what that looks like and see what's happening in town at real time. So we can provide all of those data analytics. We can also say, hey, this isn't working here. Maybe we should try this. And we can provide you with all of those insights on a weekly cadence. Again, we really are a mountain community-based company. We provide the pedicabs in Idaho Springs for free, and the Mountain Youth Network runs them. So they'll bring people here and there from town, and they just work off of tips and make it their own schedules and do a lot of the cool things within the community. And it allows people to park further away, but also be pedicabbed in by the Youth Network. It provides them summer jobs too, and it's been really a cool experience.
There's like an app that oversees that.
Yeah, so they'll just actually have signage points where they'll pick up and drop off. So everybody kind of waits there, and it's also on the map and park, so they can figure out where pedicabs will pick you up and drop you off. Yeah. Again, we really pride ourselves on positive feedback. And this is just for some instances and examples, so feel free to read them when you would like, or if you do want to. We're all about our customer service. Our people are on the ground. We're actually local ambassadors of the community. We find it a lot that when our people are on the ground, people are asking them questions like, hey, where's the nearest restroom? Where's the ATM? Do you know the best restaurant or bar we can go to? We've seen that throughout town a lot. And we pick up the trash on the streets and just become an ambassador of the community.
Good question. I've been hearing from some local business owners who've expressed concerns around like the potential impact this will have on businesses, that maybe people will be less willing to come downtown. And I'm just curious, you've rolled this out in other communities. Did those concerns come up before? And if so, what did you find after with programs you put in place?
Sure, yeah. So we've seen this in other communities where everybody's a little concerned or not adapted to change initially. However, once we've reached out to all the businesses within the community, our teams and management teams go into businesses, talk to them, we'll register their employees on our behalf. They do, initially are like, hey, this is going to make our business have a bad rep because no one's coming here. However, what we've seen in Idaho Springs is they're seeing more table turns in their restaurants than they ever have before, because people have parking spaces and they're turning tables more so because people are actually coming and going throughout the community.
So, yeah, we've seen increases in business tax.
The mic.
Oh, you might come up. Sorry.
Yeah, we've seen increases in business tax, turnover. If you go to downtown Idaho Springs, there's no empty storefronts right now, so it's really worked out really well. It's a nominal charge for the parking, so.
And how does it work? You mentioned outreach to the business community. What does that look like?
We go to every business. We sit down, explain the program, sign up all the employees for free. We have a interactive communication when an employee leaves and is added, so it becomes a real win-win. The technology, you can pay literally right in the restaurant. I'd suggest a nominal fee here, and it just turns the spaces and the businesses just thrive.
Thanks. What other questions?
Well, that does sound all good. It's I'm not totally clear how we start into a contract like this. Obviously, before you start talking to all the businesses, you want some kind of insurance that you'll actually have the business of the town. I know the sketch that we saw kind of suggests these different zones. But how far do we need to commit to more? Do we just say, yes, we want to work with you? Or is it still open, whether it's just enforcement or whether it's taking parking fees for the parking lots that we pay for? Or is it already defined? We're taking that package and we just decide about the exact fees.
I don't think anything is defined right now. On your agenda tomorrow at the council meeting is the second reading of the ordinance to enter into an agreement with them to start the discussion of what things look like.
Okay.
That's the first
Just
step.
the discussion.
And, on the subject of enforcement, because it came up at the last meeting, and I know there's costs involved, and I know we're fortunate, I don't mean to put Chief on the spot or anything, but, I know that your department is just dealing with a huge increase in call volume, and I just would love to kind of get your thoughts around, given everything you guys are dealing with currently, how much of a priority realistically can you make on enforcement? Thanks.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We are getting hammered right now with our general call volume. In 2019, we had 5,300 and change calls for service. In 2023, we had 10,660. And January alone in 24, we had over 1,000. So we're on pace to break last year's numbers if we keep up what we had in January. Right now, I currently have one community service officer. Those folks are the ones that do the parking enforcement. We lost one in September, and since he's left, I have told the guy that we have do not do parking. We don't have time to do it. What it takes to do a parking route for one person is about 6 hours, because they have to physically walk around and mark tires, wait the time allotment, go around, issue tickets, and then issue another mark on tires to continue the process. It's very ineffective, very time consuming, and I'd have to have dedicated personnel that are just doing that to do parking, and I'd need at least 2, probably 3, if you guys wanted to do it 6, 7 days a week, from 8 to 5. It'd take me probably 3 employees with employee costs, insurance and everything, about 85,000 a person, just to do parking. Right now, community service is helping out with animal complaints, property issues, abandoned vehicles, found property, some minuscule theft stuff, VIN inspections. So their day is filled up with stuff from when they get on to when they go home. So doing the parking is just not feasible at this moment.
Thank you.
Councilmember Fontana has her hand raised.
Yeah. Councilmember Fontana?
Hi. I was hoping, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, the first.
But if you could get a
question I-
little closer to the mic, we'd hear you even better.
Okay, perfect. The first question I had would be directed towards Chief. Would the funds, some of the funds raised, go towards his funding for his services?
Not that I'm aware of. Most of it was allocated to the general fund. So even now, when we write citations, parking, or traffic, all that goes to the general fund.
Okay, so monetarily, we wouldn't direct these funds back towards your programs. They would go towards the general fund?
That is correct. And we do get paid. Our budget is out of the general fund, so everything eventually works itself back together.
Okay, and the second question I had was towards interstate parking itself, to themselves. And that is, you know, and maybe Christy also can help with this one. We have the 3 parking lots that we pay for as a city that Christy had mentioned it's not sustainable by itself, and the cost of those lots could be going up to the city. You know, next year the one will go up in May. As far as the money with those lots, does that money raised there in fees of if it's $5 or if it's a ticket because they've been past, you know, their 2-hour limit, whatever, that goes back into the general fund also?
Yes, that's how it's set up right now.
Okay, so the money that would be brought to that. The other thing is, in those 3 parking lots, is there some kind of place where we can put in the contract with interstate parking that those would be a cost to them, or is that directly a cost to the city only? Do they share in that payment of that? If the lot is $20,000 a year, that comes out of the city's profit at the end of the year?
So it's a separate contract. The city has contracts with each of the private property owners, and it doesn't have anything to do with interstate parking. The only way that there's the connection is if there's paid parking in those lots, then the city would be, you know, receiving funds that would offset what the lease payment is.
I think I could ask.
Okay, and
Suzanne.
Interstate is not willing to take up, to be asked to say, hey, we have to pay for these things. Can this come out of some of their cost of doing business also? Is that in a contract? I mean, is that available to be put into that contract somewhere?
I would say that it's the city's. The city wants to have those parking lots, and so I would consider that it's the city's responsibility to be paying that lease payment. The interstate parking is not concerned necessarily with where that paid parking spot is.
Yeah. Oh, wait.
Just to maybe ask Suzanne's question another way, the 230,000 back of the napkin potential city share is the gross.
Correct.
Share. It's not the net after the parking leases.
Correct.
Thanks.
And is there any concern in regards to, so let's say we go ahead with this and we're now charging for people in those lots that we lease. I mean, what if the owners of those lots all of a sudden say, hey, the city's making this kind of money, and next thing you know, we see a significant increase in what they charge?
The council will have the opportunity to continue that lease or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
I'm curious too, we have a significant percentage of our population that's over 65. So, and they love to tell me constantly that they're on a fixed income, even though I'm on a fixed income too. They're not gonna have the advantage of using the technology that's available, so how is this gonna work for them?
So, yeah, with the kiosks, we have about 350 of them installed throughout the mountains in a lot of situations like that. Very easy to use, touch buttons. So the older population tends to gravitate towards those.
They won't be able to find a parking place though, because they don't have an app on their phone, right?
Oh, you don't need the app to find a parking space. You just park in the parking space and then use the kiosk once you find the space.
So am I misunderstanding that the app will show me where there's empty and available parking spaces?
It'll help you if you want to use the app to find space, but if you want to drive around and find a space, you're more than,
Sure,
just
you
pick-
can do that.
you can choose the first available. So it's either or, and the same with the Tap and Explorer. So it's a QR code paid system. A lot of people love it because you don't have to get out of your car. You can just click on your phone and pay, but you can also pay with the kiosk too. And it works great in Idaho Springs where there's a huge senior population, and Breckenridge and Morrison, and yeah.
Are people able to pay in advance, like with the thing that you put on your windshield for like I-70 and some of those things, where you pay in advance and then you track it and then you?
It's like a smart card technology.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, pay in advance. It's not very popular in these kind of solutions.
Okay.
People prefer to pay because you think you're going to the restaurant for an hour and you stay for 2 hours, or you make the adjustment and all that. So, yeah, generally people just pay with their credit card.
So do you pay them when you're moving away, when you're leaving the
No,
parking?
you pay when you arrive.
Okay.
Yeah. You choose your time, and then you have the ability either through the kiosk or through the Tap and Explore to add time if you so decide. It'll actually send you a notification saying your time's expiring.
So let's say hypothetically, you park, you take out an hour or two of parking, you go to whatever restaurant you want to go to, and maybe it's taking longer, waits, et cetera.
Yeah.
You could either on your app on your phone or just go out back to the kiosk and up it at that point.
Yeah, totally.
Or
So
do what I
that
do
happens
and leave.
pretty regularly.
And leave.
Yeah, you
Or-
can just do
or-
what I do and leave. Because it takes 3 hours and I can't afford the parking and I get out of Aspen. That's kind of how you do it.
It's
like a
kind of
mortgage.
Or Breckenridge.
Yeah.
The same thing.
So on the fees, I guess there's two different types of fees. There's a revenue share that we're looking at, and then there's also, the city can also pay a flat fee.
Yeah, if you wanted to just go to 2 hour or 3 hour parking, which is not where most communities, only one of our communities does that now.
Uh-huh.
And they're actually looking at not doing it because it's very costly with the cost of labor now. The other problem with that is it's always confrontational. You're always in a situation where I was staying 2 hours and I stayed 3 and you get a violation, whereas with this system, you can make the adjustment like we talked about.
Yeah.
There's really no way to make an adjustment in that scenario. I stayed over 3 hours, you stayed over 3 hours, you get a violation. It becomes very, very confrontational and not a good experience.
You guys work on anything like quotas or anything like that for paying the split fees? Do you guys, maybe you have to, tell your people to try and meet quotas or anything to try and up fees
No
to
quotas.
get more?
It's all, really, it's all data analytics, looking at occupancy and trying to turn the spaces for the businesses and what's best for the community. So, we're seeing compliance now in Vancouver in Colorado with of 98% now. People know when they see our programs with the signage and the technology that just, enter your license plate, follow procedures, and you're going to have a great time and enjoy the city or town or whatever. So.
And there are also options for like overnight parking. We seem to have, since the new wave came in down on Saga Street, we seem to have a lot of
Totally.
uptick in overnight parking.
The reason we like to start with a 50-50 revenue share is because, Chrissy's laid out a plan, which is fantastic. It's based on what we've done everywhere. But when you change one thing in one area, it affects other areas, so we need to make changes. So we're going to constantly give you data analytics on occupancy and what people are experiencing, whether it's residents or employees or, visitors, and we'll make changes. So, we talk about the 2.5 hour is the ideal time. We'll probably set a rate structure that'll motivate people to stay 2.5 hours and move on. Now, we may get feedback from businesses because we're so close with the businesses, like they'll literally know our people. They'll have our phone numbers to call us anytime. we'll make adjustments. Whatever's best for the community, that's the beauty of the program. We provide the technology, the people, the website, the analytics. You tell us what to do from there.
Councilmember Fontana has her hand raised again.
Okay, great.
So this is kind of directed towards Christy possibly. It does sound like to start the program, it will require some labor from the city, a knowledgeable person, someone who can undertake a project like this, you know, put information back and forth. Do we have that person? Do we have some a team in place for that already, or does that fall back to like public safety or you know, some kind of labor for that?
If the council decides to move forward with the contract with Interstate Parking, they take all of that on. They do the outreach to the businesses, they create the communication. We will obviously offer, you know, any input as far as that communication goes, but it's not labor intensive for city staff.
Yeah, I can just say, we'll bring the analytics to you and say, you know, this is what we've done, and this is the impact, and you guys will make the decisions on rates, hours of operation, free parking for residents, free parking for employees. And we'll make changes constantly. There's not a lot of, one of the beauties of our program, like the chief was talking, every community we've come into was a situation where the police department was handling it, and it just, the bottom line, it fell to the bottom, and with staffing and everything else. And the technology is pretty complicated. It's not something you can, we've been doing this for 30 years now, so to get to where we are now takes a long time, and it's become very specialized. And you know, the second thing is the people too. We've got great people. If you talk to any town, we hire people from the town, and we train them. We do all kinds of awards. We realize you need good people, and we realize when they're on the street, they're representing the city of Salida. Very important.
3 questions. The first is, well, first is a comment more than anything that I'm excited about the wayfinding piece and how that can maybe integrate with our other wayfinding efforts that we heard about recently. Number 2, is there an instance where you used a phased approach in a community? There's certain community names that are triggers for Salida, Breckenridge, Boulder, and Aspen are 3 that just a lot of people in Salida are opposed to being like those communities. So I'm wondering if we want to be a bit conservative in our approach and look at like a multi-year kind of phasing to implementing, especially downtown. Has that been done anywhere else?
I think you're kind of doing that right now if you look at the map, how you're doing it, because you've got the core, you know, and then you got the 4 other zones, we call them. I think it's a great way to do it, right? Because it gives you flexibility. It gives the ability to say residents are free, the employees are free. On the outskirts, you can make decisions on that. Hourly parking is a great way to go. So there is free parking even for visitors. I think Christy and the team have done a great job on that.
But we could look at maybe phasing in those leased parking lots first, and then as the community gets used to it, maybe looking to implementing on F Street and downtown. All I've heard from constituents is opposition to that downtown corridor being paid parking. And I'd love to hear from anybody who thinks otherwise, but I haven't. So I've just heard really strong opposition from both businesses and citizens. So just putting that out there that
I've gotten similar business.
People have app fatigue is what you're saying? I always love downloading another app.
Anyway.
We actually don't use an app. It's all QR code. So you actually take a picture of the QR code and it takes you right to the payment website. So there's no more apps. We don't, we've got the same.
That's preferable to me as a millennial.
And just change is hard. So I'm wondering.
No, we've been through this many times, and that's why I like the segregated program. For the first 3 months, we won't give out a violation. It'll just be warnings, and it might be a coupon to one of the local restaurants. It's a very eased-in program. And once you get feedback, you make changes, and that's where you really get the buy-in. When residents have parking in front of their house, they can go downtown, they can park, all the things, and then they start to see the revenue that can be reinvested in the community. And really, the revenue is coming from visitors. So,
Thank you. I had 3 questions, but I don't remember my third.
When they come back to you, Councilmember
Okay,
Davenport.
my question is about the overnight parking. You know, what I'm recalling, and it was a lot of decades ago, so I may not be remembering it right, but it seems like that the meters were only paid parking between 8 and 5. In other words, traditional business hours.
Sure.
That allowed that if people had too much to drink downtown, that they could easily leave their car.
Sure.
And then their goal was to just go get it in the morning. And they weren't punished financially for making a responsible decision like that. Why is the overnight parking important?
It's really up to you if you want overnight parking or not, so.
I mean, are you seeing that as a big moneymaker? Is that pivotal to the program?
Not overly. A lot of municipalities now have no parking between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. for plowing. So up until, it might be paid, like my vision for you would be till 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock at night, and the program's done. So that's nice for employees. Later at night, they can park right by their employer if they've got cash or they have concerns about security. Overnight parking we don't see it much in municipalities at all.
Yeah, I'd prefer it to be ending at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
It would just be nice for residents that live downtown to be able to park downtown overnight and know that they were not going to run into any issues.
And we can register them with that capability. If you,
Especially if they're living out of their cars.
Yeah, especially.
That's expensive.
I do agree with Dominique on the phasing in. It's totally justifiable to anyone. I don't see how anyone could argue that we're having to pay to lease parking, and so therefore you're going to have to cost share that with us. And then as far as the city's concerned, I'd like the money that we make from parking to be restricted to parking for an eventual purchase of some land to create parking. We had somebody wanting us to turn the old D Street apartments into parking. We can't do that because of grant restrictions, and we can't afford to lose that area for affordable housing. It historically, even though it was poorly designed and built, it was indoor paneling on the outside, it still provided housing. So we know we can do a way better job than what's been done in the past. But I think that's going to be part of the buy-in from the public, that money goes back to parking.
Just had one more question about, I guess, back to the the fees for employees and residents. Is that fee, that implied free fee that doesn't get paid, does that funnel back into I guess, would the city still incorporate that and pay that amount at the end of the year towards the?
It's factored into the revenue split, so.
It's factored in, okay.
We handle it all. It's all, it's all via the website.
Sorry to make you have to get
Yeah, get some exercise. I
Yeah.
need it. It's all handled via the website. Very easy for everybody to do on the website. You just sign up and show that you're a resident or an employee. And we literally go around, if we were to move forward with the program, we'd sit at City Hall for like a week to sit down with anybody that's a resident to help them get registered. So we either go to the employer or we'll go directly to the resident. Make it really easy.
Back to that, okay.
Anything else tonight? I really appreciate your time.
I just do want to summarize what I heard Russ say. If we were to pay for parking enforcement, which would make it fair, that would cost us $240,000. But we have the potential to make $230,000. So we're going to have to go this way. The question is, when can we phase it? Could we skip a year? Because we're doing something that we haven't done in a few years by having traffic on F Street all year long. We don't know what that effect is going to be. So I feel like the project is premature just because of that. And I think that, I'd like to see David Lady look at making some of those streets one way, like we saw on the survey results. If F Street and G Street were one way and there was parallel parking, how many spaces do we gain? How far do we improve our parking situation with those kinds of changes?
So you're saying with the angled parking? Or
Yes.
Okay, angled, okay. Yeah.
Councilmember Fontana.
Yep.
Yep.
Councilmember Fontana?
I have one last thing, and it has to do with someone had just mentioned the part about the free parking, the gratis parking at the end of the year where that's figured up. Does interstate parking get a fee for a free parker? Like myself, obviously I live here. I'm going to come downtown. I'm going to eat somewhere. I'm going to hopefully park for free because I have my little thing. I'll be there 2 hours. So do they get money off of me?
No.
Or
So
no.
that's all factored into the revenue share. So we sat with Christie and we went through the whole downtown core. We looked at what would be required, and that's the norm in all our constituencies. So it's really, the program's really designed for the entire community. So the idea is that employees, residents have free parking, visitors pay a nominal fee, and hopefully that turns the spaces so the businesses do really well, business tax goes up, and everybody wins.
For as long as they
Okay,
want.
so what you're saying is the city doesn't make money off of me parking there, and you don't make money off of me parking there
Exactly,
either.
yeah, and we just register your license plate. You don't need a hang tag or a sticker or anything like that. It's all done by your license plate.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that was actually free to all of us. Okay, that's great. Thank you for that.
So in other words, Councilmember Fontana, you're a lost leader.
Thank you.
I remembered my last question. That data about the spending taking place in the first hour or two, can you say more about that, or where does it come from? How is that
It's just
studied?
based on same kind of analytics we do for retailers. It's a commonly held concept that within the first 1 hour to it's probably 2.5 hours here, that after that point, you can just see a direct drop. Like you were talking about, after 2.5 or 3 hours, you're done, right? Kind of thing. So you kind of create a rate structure that makes it very reasonable, to be here for 3 hours. And thereafter you accelerate so that people will turn, so the businesses. So, restaurants in Idaho Springs that used to turn twice a day now turn 7 times a day. And, people that are visiting are paying a nominal fee. Most visitors to Salida, honestly, would expect to pay for parking. It's a beautiful town. It's a great location with the river and everything too. So it's kind of the norm.
Does anybody remember, I'm looking at the more longer term folk, why paid parking didn't work last time we tried this?
Well, the business owners were screaming bloody murder. And so they did not
that's-
see the positive results
Right.
that we're talking about here. And of course, the analytics weren't in place where you could prove what the effect was.
And this was was it in the 80s?
It's very analog.
And they were showing off the.
I just want to
parking
know, I
meters.
mean, we've already tried it.
Yes, I know.
Right, like the beginning of Cool Hand Luke.
Yes.
Pretty solid stuff.
I think they'd be,
Anecdotes that, like the kiosk never worked and there really wasn't any compliance and all those kind of things. So, yeah, we handle all the technology in-house, like the kiosks are solar powered. Everything is paperless and green. Everybody employed locally. They walk around the streets. We use hybrid vehicles. We're very much into the environment. And we try, our slogan is always make parking fun and easy. So the QR code is just really easy to use, like so simple. No app download, no touching the machine. It's like when you load everybody during restaurants for COVID, you just did the QR code. It's fantastic. So.
We good? Okay. Thank you very much. Really appreciate your time.
oh, wait.
Oh.
No, it's Joe.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
I'm watching you.
I just do want to say, I mean, it doesn't matter really what, putting in any kind of parking. That I pulled 2 handicap parking signs out of the river below the bridge this summer. So people are, taking signs and throwing them wherever they want to throw them and parking wherever they want to park right now. So,
Yeah.
it's always going to be.
We handle all
it's
the
always going to be a problem.
signage. The big thing to realize too is because we've been through so many Colorado municipalities now, all our signage has been vetted with municipalities. The handicap rules in terms of websites, signage, all that, we take care of it. Credit card compliance, that's our problem. You know, it's a whole package. It's staffing, it's payroll, we take care of it all. The website really does become a portal for the community. It becomes a place to find out about events going on. The water fill station sounds like a funny thing, but water fill's usage in Breckenridge is up almost 500%. So we start putting them on the map because people know where to go fill up with water. So it's pretty cool.
So the fees that are set, we work together with you guys to set those fees,
Totally.
or we get to make those choices ourselves?
Yep, you guys make the final decision, and we'll give you all kinds of statistics to make that decision. And it's really based on making it a win for the community. That's what it's all about. I want to be in Colorado. I want my kids to run this company. So we want to be here for 30, 50, 100 years.
That's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay. And what everyone's been waiting for, the council handbook overview.
About halfway through this.
Good evening. Myself and Christy will be presenting this, but I thought this was a good time for you to revisit your council handbook. We wrote it a couple years ago, but there's about half of you new, and just to basically see what's worked, what hasn't. We did do it in the midst of COVID, so there's certain things I want to point out. I was going to point out a few things at the outset, and then I was going to go through it and see if you have any comments as to what you'd like to change in the handbook or any questions. So the first thing is, as I mentioned in the memo, we have recommend a few updates to the conflicts of interest portion, just to make it more in line with what the state statute says. That's not in your packet. I would recommend that in a red line version. So if you do amend just to take a step back, if you do amend your handbook, it will be done via resolution and it'll be redlined in the future, but taking in account your direction. So I would say that's more of a ministerial thing that we would recommend, is to update the conflicts of interest provision just to have it more in line with the state statute and for it to all be there. The second thing is that came from you all the past couple of years, is removal of the idea of removal of an item from an agenda. So our handbook talks about that two of you put something on an agenda. What would you want to have to remove something from the agenda? Would it be a supermajority? That sort of thing. I don't know if anyone has any comments about that now, or because two of you can put something on the agenda. So then what should it be to remove? Or should it just be that nothing?
A majority can always table it, right? Or push it into the future.
Well, the idea is, though, it does take a lot of staff time to put something on an agenda, to put it together. So in other words, if somebody says, oh, I want to put this topic on the agenda, and then how many people should say, well, no, we don't want to put that on the agenda, because it does take, like I said, time to put together packets and information.
In Bob's rules, isn't it like, don't we have certain things where it has to be 2/3?
Yes. So is that something that you'd want 2/3?
What do people feel on that?
That makes sense to me, because you don't want to just idly assign stuff to staff and then, the next meeting go, oh, never mind.
Right. Yeah, I would appreciate that. I can't speak for all of staff.
Yeah.
So again, these are these are just things that were brought up. Then we'll go through the whole handbook. Some of you said that you'd like to have something. Now these two ideas are separate. A total amount of meeting absences before a member is removed from the governing body, and then the second, although related, is a maximum number of virtual appearances that are permitted.
Yeah.
The latter is actually I work in Woodland Park as well, and they decided that they did want some flexibility so people could go on vacation and do this and that, but it was getting a little too much where there was actually one person who might not have even lived in the state, that they were like appearing virtually every single meeting. So how do we feel about those two provisions? Do you think that you should have a minimum, someone said, well, maybe it should be like 4 meetings, that if someone doesn't appear at all, that they're no longer, obviously steps would need to be taken, but it's something that you agree to. And you could, this could be nothing, you could also think about it. And then if anyone's interested in the maximum number of virtual appearances permitted per year.
So I'll weigh in, and then people feel free to chime in. I like the idea of, a maximum of 4 unexcused absences in a given year. I mean, obviously, if someone's having some kind of medical situation, that would apply to virtual as well, where they simply weren't capable of attending. I think that needs to be built in, but I'm curious to what other people think. I mean, I think I've missed like 1 meeting a year, and I think if you could miss 4 a year, that seems pretty liberal. And especially if you have the ability to attend 4 virtually in a given year. I don't know. I mean, what other people think?
Well, yeah, I feel like there is something to be said about it. It is nice and convenient to attend virtually, having spent a good 4 years co-serving with somebody in Ward 2 that was essentially a floating virtual head. That was a little frustrating.
I know.
Yeah, I do see that there is some credence to having a limit just to ensure that people are actually physically in their community sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that 4 unexcused absences is absurd. The only reason that you would have an unexcused absence is you fell down and broke your leg in the jungle. Hello. And who's that going to happen to? You should be able to get to a phone, to a computer, an internet connection, and explain why you can't be here. Unexcused absences should just not be tolerated, period. And I think there should be 2 standards. One is, you're really sick. You're really in a recovery, and there should be more tolerance for that. Because the odds are you didn't jump off a cliff and break your leg on purpose, and so there should be some mercy in situations that are beyond your control. But when you run for office, you're committing to being here. I like the number 4, that 4 virtual, because you could be away at a conference, and you could negotiate for more. Because when I'm in San Francisco, if that happens on a night, I might have trouble with the internet connection at the motel, because that was my experience in Atlanta. So I understand that things do happen that are beyond your control, but mostly you should be here.
Yeah.
Does it apply to regular meeting and work session, or just?
Oh, okay. Councilmember Suzanne Fontana has her hand up. I'm
Oh.
sorry, I don't mean to stop.
Oh, well, why don't we'll come back to, because we're still.
Yeah, sorry.
We'll come back to Councilmember Fontana in just a minute. Let's answer.
Well, I'm attending both, because what's the point of having work sessions if you don't attend?
Right. I guess it's just because one comes after another. If you're missing one, you might end up for that same reason, be missing that other one. Especially if they happen on the same day. is what I'm
Considered
saying.
as a pair, is what I hear you say.
Yeah.
Or you could not include work sessions, you could just use regular sessions. That's where, formal business occurs. It's up to you all. If somebody is that disengaged that they're, appearing a lot of virtually or not even telling you why they're not appearing, they're probably not, they're also probably also not, attending work sessions, so.
It's a good point.
Yeah, focused on the regular meeting would probably make the most sense.
Yeah.
I think work sessions are informative, and you can watch the recording and be equally as informed.
That's true.
If you can't make it. So I would suggest focusing on council regular meetings.
Councilmember Fontana, I know you had your hand up.
Hello. So obviously we're talking about the virtual, which here I am tonight. Very unfortunate. I do agree with the 4 unexcused absences. Exactly like everybody said, you have done this job. You were elected to do this job by the people. Please be there, do your job. Like in my case, as of today, I got out of the hospital 2 days ago, and nobody wants me there. But this is absolutely wonderful that I can do this tonight. And tomorrow night, I'll have to do the same. I'm in a wheelchair. Even adapting to my situation for me to come may require 4 absences, but I wouldn't be absent. I would be virtual.
Yeah, those are 2 separate
So-
thoughts, yeah. So if you want to have a limit
Yes.
for unexcused absences, and then if you want to have a limit for virtual appearances.
Yeah, I mean.
Correct. Because
Yeah.
I think this
have to install it,
virtual,
right?
and I have never done this before. my job doesn't allow that, none of my employees can appear virtual and say, hey, where's a hammer? What do we say? Hey, aisle 16 or something. So this is such a benefit for me to get to participate something like this without having to come in a wheelchair, somebody to lift me up the 3 steps and then to raise my leg and all the other things. So I'm in very much support of the virtual when it's necessary. It doesn't mean always, or if you get a cold or whatever, but also the 4 absences are, I think, reasonable.
And, when I look at this body, I mean, 4 is, unexcused absences is overkill. I look here and that, I mean, people are here consistently. So, I don't see that being a problem. I mean, I could see, on the unexcused side, maybe it could even be a lower number. And then obviously, if you have a situation where you've had a medical emergency, that's an excused absence, so that wouldn't apply. So maybe the unexcused is a lower number, maybe it's 2. And then if there's some kind of life situation that comes up, I mean, we're all reasonable people. But I do like the ability of having 4 virtual meetings, because I definitely feel like it's a lot more productive and efficient to be here in person than to be virtual, if you have that choice.
I agree with that, and that, I think, started the discussion.
Okay, I think we have direction, and then obviously you could always amend when you see whatever we draft for that issue.
And in medical situations, it should be negotiable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's more of like making your presence, the de facto presence is virtual, is a little bit like writing it off.
Right.
I got to be sitting here getting yelled at, and then, these guys are sitting on the Barco lounger, they can put on mute.
These chairs are pretty comfortable, Justin.
Yeah, but I can't put my feet up, I don't know, it's just kind of, I can't get a snack, I can't get eat popcorn while I'm hearing oh, those guys are getting yelled at so bad.
You could put your feet up, but it might show up on the front page of tomorrow's paper.
Right. Just, really trying to address the extremes, for sure.
Yeah.
So then the next thing that some have brought up, staff and including mayor, is to clarify roles and responsibility, communication with staff, relationship with appointed officials, and maybe even start your handbook with that versus, getting into the nitty gritty of the meeting procedures. That's an issue that comes up all the time, not just in Salida, all the municipalities I represent. And then this is, I'm not even sure if this is in your handbook, but I have a strong recommendation regarding reflective listening as it relates to quasi-judicial public hearings. It gives me a lot of anxiety from a legal perspective. We just went over the training with quasi-judicial when we get into that. So I can't tell you what to do otherwise, but I can't tell you what to do anyway, but I strongly advise to prohibit that. And it doesn't even need to be in the council handbook, but it just made me think this is been for a couple of years that in quasi-judicial hearings, there could be issues where that could create liability for the city with the reflective listening. Salida is becoming more and more on the map. There's a lot of developments. These could be multi-million-dollar lawsuits. I try to protect the city, so that's just something that's been on my mind for a few years.
Okay. That makes sense. I appreciate you.
So I might add that to the quasi-judicial. So if we can, we, meaning Sarah, thank you, Sarah. Sometimes I use the universal we. People I work with call me out on it. So I guess we'll just go through this and see if you have points that you want to bring up, and then even if it's not in this written handbook, if you all came with, things that you want to add, because again, this is your handbook. It's something that you want to embrace. You want to say, set the tone for. So meeting procedures, these are just basically what you already have. You have after 9 o'clock, you do the majority. Public hearing, that's just recommended how you do a public hearing. The quorum, that's what it's got to be. This is your.
Is there anybody interested in more public comment time? Maybe 4 or 5, or no? Okay.
No, I think 3 is good.
Just wanted to see if there was an interest there.
And there's actually been studies about public engagement. When you reduce the amount of time, more people participate because, people have families and that kind of thing.
Member Nacarado, did you have something?
We can get to it when we talk about the order of the agenda.
Oh, yeah, so that's what I would like, yeah. How do you guys, what do you want to?
Well, the public comment period, I think there's a combination of things, right? There's public comment, there's reflective listening, and then there's the timing of it where we can't respond to public comments until the end of the meeting. So there's that separation. I've expressed my frustration with that before, but I'm wondering if we want to look at all of that. And
Some of my cities have the public comment at the end, but then some people say, well, that's not really, it's up to you all, but then it's
The
kind of
only
like
issue
this-
there is you're making people sit around for an hour and a half or two.
Yeah,
And I think that would really discourage it. This is just off the top of my head, so shoot me down if you think it's a harebrained idea. But would it be possible to follow public comment with council reports so that we'd have an opportunity to respond? It would, I don't know,
I think we would come into the meeting with our reports instead of walking away from the meeting with our report.
or just to follow the public comments, so people, it's one, so you reflect back to them, but there's nothing, as opposed to maybe if it was something that one of us was like, wow, that's a really good point, we could address it, because very rarely do people make a public comment at 6:15 and hang around to 8:15.
But they do hear reflective listening, which I think with that separation comes across as a confirmation. That's the only discussion that's had with that comment. And so they hear reflective listening, which sounds like a confirmation of their viewpoint because that's the only response.
Mm-hmm.
Very rarely in my reports am I like rehashing new business or old business. It's, if anything, it would be just pointing out a public comment. If it's something new, if it's something that I didn't already have before entering the meeting, it would just be to address that already. So if it does come in like a quicker fashion, I do understand that logic.
And I think, I realize that strides have been made to make sure that to try not to make that the viewpoint, that it's a confirmation when you do reflective listening. I understand the benefit and the civility behind that as well, so.
Do any other communities do that? Not a single one.
It's,
But
we can
it's
come
up to
back.
you.
It is up to you. It is up to you.
I don't know if
It
you
is
wanna ask
a
Lois.
kind of a,
Slippery slope.
it is a little bit of a slippery slope. We can come back, we can come back to you with maybe some recommendations on what that looks like. I understand your desire to respond to the public, after public comment. I will make a note. We will see if there's something,
Some communities will say, like, certain issues, the mayor will say, David Lady, he's not here anymore. David Lady, would you reach out to this person about the issue that you brought up regarding, streets after the meeting? But I don't know how that's your administrators.
I kind of feel like it should kind of stay the way it is because, it's, just the short time that I've been on the council, there's been some speakers that come that you want to say something back to them almost immediately. You can almost find yourself, getting yourself in a little bit of trouble. So I kind of find myself not be able to speak. Helps me out to be able to, like, by the end of the meeting, I'm like, maybe I don't really, that doesn't bother me as much as it should, and I don't.
Aaron, all politicians love to speak and pontificate, right?
Yeah.
But I do agree with Aaron that there is a benefit to that time that goes on, because sometimes there's discussion that goes on that clarifies, how you would respond if you were responding individually. And that if you respond too soon, it does tend to come off as argumentative. And I've been frustrated as well. Like, we would need to be able to speak to these people before they leave. But if we're consistent in our approach and they want to hear us speak to it, they'll turn us on YouTube for council reports. They certainly have that opportunity. And that might be part of the mayor's comments, you know?
And, you know, related to that is, I mean, I always, with public comment, offer up if people feel like they haven't had enough time, they can reach out to me. And I think it's happened at least once, but less than 3 times in the last 2+ years. So maybe, yeah, I see the point, yeah.
But what I'm concerned about is people's understanding of government and the way our municipal government works. And it's people's First Amendment right to come to the podium and say, it's their First Amendment right. They can say anything, and there are some, like, most likely unintended falsehoods that get said that don't get clarified, like just a government 101 clarification, and what happens instead is reflective listening, so it sounds like confirmation of what they said. And so I'm really kind of thinking about the education of the public that's possible.
Do you have concerns with the reflective listening, or?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good, because I'm hearing that from some people.
Back to her.
So what I'm hearing you say. No, I mean, I have heard that from others. I have.
Well, you know, with reflective listening, I think it should be a summary, and a summary by definition is shorter than the original speech, and we do not hit that mark. You know, oftentimes the reflective listening goes on just as long as the original, so that's the problem I have with it.
Problem. See, I did it really quickly there.
Yeah. Thanks. I do understand why it's there. I mean, it kind of goes in line with our civility vocation to create more of a conversation than talking to a wall. I remember how it felt in previous councils where you're just kind of getting like the stone face, like you're like, okay, I don't know if it's getting in there, whatever. So like I do get that, like creating an environment. We do have the power to do that, if nothing else, to create this kind of more welcoming.
And, you know, the challenge is, like, if you don't have a stone face, then you get accused of stickering or something like that. You know, so it's like,
God forbid.
Councilmember Fontana?
As far as how long, so the reflective listening, similar to what we're doing now, has been going on for 2 years. Is that about right?
For like 3.5.
I don't think PT did it, but I think whenever you became mayor.
Actually 5.
it happened when PT was
Oh, really?
still there.
Okay.
PT just, Harold initiated it, and then the two of us did it, but it's been going on for quite some time.
Okay,
Time
so
flies
it can
when
be
you're having fun.
changed, correct? I mean, obviously, it can be changed and say, no, thank you anymore. Personally, I like to go up there, say my point, and then I like to be able to have someone on the council, the mayor most of the time, sorry, Dan, to say, please reach out to me, or one of these other council members. You know, I really love when that is said. I don't, like you're saying, I don't think it is followed through upon, but I like that almost better than the reflective listening. Because then they actually get one-on-one, and then they can, I feel like they are listened to.
We just like make up a general straight across the board response to everybody, just say the same thing to everybody. So, thank you for talking.
Or just 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, maybe just,
I like the reflective listening. I just feel like it needs to be a summary. So you're in favor of having the traffic on F Street, you know? Because that summarizes it for the public as well, who may have tuned that person out because they were kind of wandering or whatever. You know, but you just capture the main idea and reflect that back.
Yeah, would be great to rotate with through all of the council.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable idea as well. And the people who don't want it, you don't do it. You know, like when Ray says, I know what I said, let it go.
Can't, and you need to pass, you can signal, like
If
if it's too tough, one, or you feel personally attacked and you're not gonna be able to do it well.
That's what I hear you say is I'm a jerk, I hate my guts. Did I hear that right?
Is there anything more?
Harlan have been awesome in those situations.
What's that?
Dan and Harlan and Dan have been awesome in those situations.
Yeah.
You know, I don't
To
know
me,
how to do it.
what I like about reflective listening is I'm so focused on what the person's saying that there's no thought in my head around forming a response, an argument, a rebuttal, whatever it is. I'm just focused on what they have to say. And even if there's some heat behind it towards me, just that focus, the heat doesn't feel like a lot of heat.
Yeah.
How many other communities do reflective listening? Nobody does it.
But you guys are
Nobody
unique.
does it.
Okay. Yeah, you guys are unique. You can do whatever you want in these circumstances.
Yep.
I try to explain it to other places, and they're like, "What the heck are you talking about?" But I mean, I know that it's
They don't do this in Fort Morgan?
Fort Morgan has it at the end. But we'll take, we're hearing Councilmember Nacarado. What we could do is look into what other places do in terms of give some options. What, whether it be moving the reports or whether it be what type of response could be made, even if it's the mayor saying like, oh, can you connect with the staff so we could have staff, share that document that you're talking about or something like that. Yes.
I also think when it comes to council reports, I even sometimes don't know, it's like, is there, like, when is there like a moment where you could speak to that as not giving the report? If you're saying something or working something out, and then do you go, oh, is this my chance to say, hey, I'm supportive of that, or do I wait until a later time? Like, is it still a discussion amongst all of council, or is it just really like, this is your time, the floor, nobody else chimes in, unless it's like a direct request of staff? I don't know.
I've seen it, just to further Councilor Nacarado, I think maybe part of it, what you're saying is, I've seen it where it's, obviously it's an opinion, everyone's like, oh, I agree, I disagree. But where it's something like an information, or there's some kind of, like I said, document, or something that a lot of times there's like, oh, well, city manager, city administrator, can you follow up with that person and share that, whatever that either document or information is, to, in that sort of, I've seen it thrown in during that time.
Which time, sorry?
Like after each citizen comment, but not each, so think of the difference. Sometimes it's just opinions, and sometimes it's like what you're talking about, like, well, I really wish someone would clarify that for somebody,
Right,
Christy
like if somebody comes in and says, why, and you're suing the town of Poncha Springs and blah, 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 and it would be nice to point them to something informational.
Yeah. I know for me, there's so many times I write something down, I'm like, oh, now it's been 3 hours, I don't know if I should respond or say something. So.
It'd be something to consider, because I agree.
Well, and then kind of an off-the-wall idea is that we do have the Salida standard. Maybe there's a column where some of those generic comments that are incorrect are addressed, public comment reflections. And then you say, no, we're not actually suing them.
That's a good idea.
And then you train people where to go for the information. But you're not responding in an argumentative way. You're just doing the facts.
Yeah.
Some people think this, the fact is that.
I can speak tomorrow during my city attorney report about how the town of Pinch Springs sued us, if you would like. So we'll come back with some options on that.
Okay.
Anything else about this, the order? Because it was moved around 2 years ago, so.
Okay.
And then you have your consent agenda. You always have the option to pull, which you do sometimes if something's of interest. So.
That seems to work pretty smoothly.
Oh, yes. Sorry. So we're going to keep going. Thank you, Sarah. Your reports. So it says, 3 to 5 minutes. So sometimes it's not necessary in other communities where they pontificate. You obviously don't enforce it unless it gets to a certain point. You like talking about civility. I think, I think maybe this should be that you follow Bob's rules of order.
Yeah.
No community follows Robert's Rules of Order, even when they say they do. Robert's Rules of Order is like thousands of pages. Placement, so this is the placement we spoke about, either the mayor or 2 council members could put something on the agenda. And now we'll add the removal has to be 2/3.
Yeah.
Executive session is just a law, so you can ask me questions, but.
So we can't change anything there.
This is just a list of the law. The part where
Just a flesh wound.
the part where it says the Colorado Revised Statutes, that's a summary of the law. The second part is the procedure, which helps you follow the law. So that you must announce a topic of discussion. You do a good job because your attorney and staff write the explanation on the agenda, but any questions about executive sessions you could ask? The conflicts of interest provisions, like I said, I'm going to recommend amending, and that would be just to add for the statute, define what a financial interest is and what it isn't, what a personal interest is and what it isn't. Especially in this community, I think it's important. I've heard, those words thrown around, and there's a misunderstanding there. Then the disclosure and abstention as it relates to conflict of interest is what we're recommending. I'm right now I'm reading something that was drafted by Jeff Wilson. Personal gain, use of public resources. You already have that, but we're just amend it a little. And then the appearance of impropriety will give you a recommended language. And of course, it's going to be in a draft. You'll see if you approve. This is the council and staff interaction is section 4. Like I said, we were thinking about moving it to the front, similar to the examples we put in the packet. We're always asked about this. I think it's good reminders. We're asked by you all too, and some of you are, it's, kind of, let's remind ourselves how this should happen. And then, requests for routine research, how it should have come, because it's resources that we're spending. And then, so when you did look through this, was there any questions you had or any tweaks you wanted to make on this section 4?
I think it's really important that the communications go through the appropriate staff. And I know what it's like. You get someone calls you up, but they're upset about something, and the natural instinct is you want to reach out to that particular department. But if you do it that way, then Christie's in the dark in terms of what's going on. And there's a chain of command for a reason. So I just think it's really important that we operate accordingly.
Yes, and also your priorities that you have, that department head now is probably going to spend the whole day responding to that one person who called you or spoke to you, bumped into you in the Safeway, versus what's their priorities and that they're that are guided from you all through Christie.
Unless it's community development, just throw it all at them. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you back there.
Open meeting law is the law. Although since I wrote this, there's been a tweak to email, so I'll probably add that regarding non-substantive emails.
And under I, you might change that word violation to violate.
Sure.
Let's see. I. Oh, that I. Oh.
I think you're looking for a verb there.
You. 4 years, we didn't notice that. Quasi-judicial versus legislative. I might just look at it, see if it needs to be tweaked, add that reflective listening only as it relates to quasi-judicial. And these are just, I might update this from my trainings that I give. I constantly update what's making more sense to people. This is your remote participation policy, which will be amended draft based on the direction that informally we've received tonight.
Resolution.
Yeah, so the whole policy handbook we're gonna adopt. Oh yeah, I guess the resolution will say that it's amending both. So the history of this, in case you're all interested, is just there was this hypersensitivity with COVID and what do we do with remote participation? I remember there was a conversation with the listserv. can we even have quasi-judicial hearings remotely, we'll just wait a month until May when the pandemic goes away. So this was, at the time, the best, so we'll tweak it, and then after we said when it's not, emergency is not in effect, but this one just says that you need to email the city clerk when you're participating remote, but we'll add that those 4 virtual restriction that you had asked. And then I might pare down this. Again, this was for a certain purpose, certain time. And then the reasonable accommodation is just that we will make those accommodations for people as necessary. That's on the bottom of all your agendas and that sort of thing. Anything not in this handbook or in this handbook that any of you want, said, I want that, on my, it used to be called rules of procedure, but this handbook is more comprehensive.
It's helpful to see that text messaging piece for open meetings. I'm always unsure and felt like I needed to make a statement. I have my phone out during meetings because I'm a mom, and I'm going to respond to that
Of course.
if the need arises. So it's nice to know that if we're entering quasi-judicial, that to maybe be more aware of that in text messaging.
That's a good idea. All right, so we'll draft something, probably in 2 meetings, and then that will give you time to reach out if you think of anything else. And obviously, you could always amend it when it's in front of you, or and you can put it on your meeting. Every month you could amend to anything, but reach out if you think of anything else.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, have a good night, everybody.